Mark is smiling. It's a Saturday afternoon in a dealership parking lot, somewhere in a quiet American suburb. The sky is clean, the asphalt is still warm, the SUV in front of him still smells like plastic, leather, and that very specific kind of optimism that only comes with a big purchase. Mark is 29. He works in sales. He makes about $82,000 a year. He's doing the ritual, adjusting the seat, pairing his phone, tapping the screen, looking around like, yeah, this feels right. The sticker on the window says $48,000. But that's not the number that made this happen. The number that closed the deal was much smaller. Only $720 a month. That's the sentence that made this feel reasonable. That made this feel responsible. That made this feel like a normal adult decision. Mark pulls out of the lot, turns onto the road, and feels like he just leveled up his life. What he doesn't realize is that he didn't just buy a car. He just signed up for a very long, very quiet financial bleed. There is a script most of us grow up with. It's not written down anywhere. No one hands it to you, but somehow everyone knows it. The script says, if you can afford the payment, you can afford the thing. Not the price, the payment. The house, the car, the furniture, the phone, the vacation, the subscription bundle. The script doesn't ask, what does this really cost? It asks, can you make the monthly number go away? And if the answer is yes, we call that responsible. That's what Mark just did. He didn't buy a $48,000 SUV. He added a $720 line item to his life. And those two things feel completely different in the human brain. One feels heavy, the other feels manageable. This is how normal people make very expensive decisions without ever feeling like they're doing something extreme. My name is Joseph, and I spend way too much time running the numbers on everyday life. I'm not here to tell you what car to drive. I don't care what brand you like. I don't care if you love leather seats or hate them. I care about the math, because here's the uncomfortable truth. The script we've been following is optimized for comfort, not for wealth. It teaches you how to survive the month. It does not teach you how to build a future. And when you follow it long enough, you don't end up broke in one dramatic moment. You end up quietly, slowly, bleeding money in places that feel completely normal. Mark thinks he just made a reasonable adult decision. What he actually did is walk straight into a very modern financial trap. I want to give this a name, because once you name a pattern, you can finally see it. I call it the 84-month car trap, and it works like this. You take something that loses value fast. You stretch it over a very long loan, and then you hide the real cost behind a monthly number that feels harmless. On paper, it looks like a normal purchase. In reality, it's a slow financial leak that lasts most of a decade. The trap isn't the car. The trap is the framing. It trains you to optimize for the payment instead of the total damage. In this video, we're going to do three things. First, we're going to run the numbers and do a full forensic audit of what this decision actually costs over time. Not just the loan, the depreciation, and the opportunity cost. Then, we're going to talk about the psychology that makes smart, reasonable people say yes to this without hesitation. And finally, we're going to look at the system that sells payments instead of prices, and the simple rule that makes this entire trap disappear. Because once you see this, you can't unsee it. Let's stop talking about feelings and start talking about numbers. Let's run the numbers on Mark's SUV. Here are the basics. The car costs $48,000. Mark finances it for 84 months. That's 7 years, at about 8% APR. His monthly payment is roughly $720. That feels manageable. But manageable is not the same as cheap. Let's multiply. $720 a month times 12 months is $8,640 per year. Over 7 years, that's a little over $60,000. Let that sink in. This is a $48,000 car that costs over $60,000. Before the car even starts losing value, there is already a $12,000 interest tax baked into this decision. That $12,000 doesn't buy you a better engine. It doesn't buy you better safety. It doesn't buy you anything. It's just the price of stretching the loan long enough to make the payment feel comfortable. And we're still only looking at the loan. Now let's talk about the part nobody likes to look at. Depreciation. Cars are not assets. They are machines that turn money into motion and then slowly turn back into scrap. Most new cars follow a very predictable curve, roughly 20 to 25% lost in the first year, around 50% gone by year 5. By year 7, many cars have lost 60% or more of their original value. Let's be conservative. Let's assume Mark's $48,000 SUV is worth about $20,000 after 7 years. That means about $28,000 of value didn't go to anyone. It didn't build equity. It didn't compound. It just disappeared. So now let's stack the real, unrecoverable costs. Interest, about $12,000. Depreciation, about $28,000. That's $40,000. $40,000 that produces zero long-term value. This is what people mean when they say cars are expensive, not the payment, the bleeding, and we're still not done. Because the most expensive part of this decision isn't even visible on the loan statement. It's the opportunity cost. Let's talk about the alternative. Instead of buying a $48,000 SUV, Mark could have bought a perfectly reliable used car for, say, $25,000. Nothing fancy. Nothing embarrassing. Just a car. That's a $23,000 difference in upfront price, and the payment would be much lower. Let's be conservative again and say the difference in total monthly cost between these two choices is about $350 a month. Not $700, not $500. Let's say $350. Now here's the important question. What happens if Mark invests that $350 every month instead? Let's assume a very boring, very normal long-term return of 8%. Over 7 years, investing $350 a month at 8% gives you roughly $36,000 to $38,000. So now we can compare two real timelines. Timeline A, the nice SUV, pays about $60,000 over 7 years. Ends with a car worth maybe $18,000 to $20,000. Net position. You spent $60,000 and you're left with something worth about $19,000. Timeline B. The boring car buys a $25,000 used car. Invests $350 a month for 7 years. Ends with an investment account worth about $37,000. And you still have a car. The difference between these two decisions is not subtle. It's roughly $30,000 to $40,000 in net worth. Let that sink in. This is not a nice versus boring decision. This is a 5-figure wealth decision, and this is where people get confused. They say, but I need a car anyway. Yes, you do. But you don't need a $40,000 lifestyle tax attached to it. And we're still being conservative. We're not counting higher insurance, higher registration and taxes, higher maintenance outside warranty, higher risk if you need to sell early. All of that pushes the real cost even higher. But let's zoom out even more, because 7 years is not the end of the story. The real cost of this decision is not what happens to this one car. It's what happens to the pattern. If every time Mark upgrades his life, he chooses the stretch the payment option, he's not just losing $30,000 once. He's resetting his compounding engine over and over again. And compounding is not linear. Let's do a thought experiment. If Mark is 29 and keeps making decisions like this for the next 20 years, and each time he chooses the nice version instead of the boring plus invest version, and each time that choice costs him, say, $20,000 to $40,000 in missed wealth, that's not tens of thousands. That's hundreds of thousands. And that's before we even talk about what those investments would have become by age 60. This is why I keep saying, this isn't a $720 a month problem. This is a compounding problem. The payment is just the mask. The real cost is what that money could have become if it had been allowed to work for you instead of sit in a parking lot. And here's the most dangerous part of all of this. Nothing in this math feels dramatic. There is no explosion. There is no crisis. There is no moment where your bank account hits zero. It's just a quiet, steady redirection of future wealth into present comfort, month after month, year after year, until one day you look up and wonder why building wealth feels so hard. This is why optimizing for the payment is so dangerous, because the payment hides the total cost. And the total cost hides the opportunity cost. And the opportunity cost hides the future you just traded away. Run the numbers. Let that sink in. So if the math is this bad, why do smart, reasonable people keep making this exact decision? Now, let's talk about the system that makes this outcome so common. Because Mark didn't wake up one day and decide to design a terrible financial structure for himself. He was sold one. Here's the first thing to understand. Car dealers do not sell cars. They sell payments. Almost every conversation in a dealership eventually becomes some version of, what do you want your monthly payment to be? Because once the discussion is framed that way, the real price becomes flexible. If the payment is too high, they don't say, this car is too expensive for you. They say, we can stretch the term. We can adjust the financing. We can move some numbers around. And suddenly, a $48,000 car becomes affordable. Not cheaper, just longer. This is incredibly powerful because the human brain is very bad at thinking in totals over long time horizons. It is very good at thinking in monthly obligations. So the system meets your psychology exactly where it's weakest. Now, look at the incentives. Automakers want to sell more expensive vehicles because higher sticker prices mean higher margins. Dealers want to close deals, and long loans turn no into maybe, and maybe into yes. Lenders love long loans because longer time horizons mean more interest. Everyone in this chain makes more money when the term gets longer and the price gets higher. No one in this chain gets paid for telling you, this is a bad idea. You should buy a cheaper car and invest the difference. That advice has no business model. And notice something important. This doesn't require anyone to lie. All the numbers are technically correct. The payment really is $720. The loan really is approved. The car really is nice. The system doesn't have to trick you. It just has to frame the decision in the most psychologically comfortable way possible. This is not an accident. This is engineered, not by a secret conspiracy, but by very normal, very boring incentives. This is what it looks like when human bias meets a profit-maximizing machine. This is monetized human behavior. And once you see that, you start to realize something uncomfortable. The system is not built to help you build wealth. It's built to help you stay comfortable while your future gets quietly more expensive. Because this isn't a math problem first. It's a brain problem. There are 3 psychological forces doing most of the work here. The first is present bias. Your brain heavily discounts the future. Not a little, a lot. Future you is vague, abstract. The person who will deal with this in 5 or 7 years feels like a stranger. But today, you is very real. Today, you is sitting in that driver's seat, smelling the leather, touching the screen, imagining the commute. So your brain asks a very simple question. Can I live with this payment right now? Not. What does this do to my long-term net worth? And once the payment feels survivable, the decision feels done. The second force is status signaling. Cars are not just transportation, they are social signals. They quietly say things like, I'm doing well. I'm not struggling. I've made it to a certain level. Mark didn't just buy reliability. He bought an identity upgrade. And identity purchases are extremely hard to evaluate with math because they don't feel like purchases. They feel like self-expression. The third force is framing. When a $48,000 decision is framed as $720 a month, your brain literally processes it as a different category of problem. One feels like a major financial commitment. The other feels like a utility bill. Same decision, completely different emotional weight. And this is where it gets really dangerous. Once you've accepted one big payment, your entire financial life starts to reorganize around it. You don't say, I'm spending too much on my car. You say, I guess I can't save as much this year. You don't see the car as the problem. You see your goals as the problem. This is how lifestyle inflation actually works. Not as a dramatic upgrade, but as a slow shift in what feels normal. And here's the part nobody likes to admit. Most people don't buy the expensive version because they've carefully run the numbers and decided it's optimal. They buy it because the cheaper version feels like a downgrade to their identity. The car becomes part of the story they're telling themselves about who they are and where they're going. And once something is part of your identity, your brain will defend it. It will rationalize it. It will minimize the cost. It will tell you, it's fine. It's not that bad. You work hard. You deserve it. This is how perfectly intelligent people end up making financially destructive decisions while feeling completely calm about them. Your brain is optimized for comfort and social survival. It is not optimized for compounding math. That's why this trap doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like a reward. So how do you avoid this without turning your life into a spreadsheet? You need a rule. I call it the total cost of ownership rule. The idea is simple. Never make a big purchase decision based on the monthly payment. Always decide based on the total financial damage over time. Here's the checklist. Before you say yes to any car, ask 4 questions. Step 1. What is the total amount I will pay? Not the sticker, not the payment, the total over the entire loan term. Step 2. What will this thing realistically be worth when I'm done with it? Be conservative. Assume heavy depreciation. Step 3. What is the unrecoverable cost? That's total paid minus resale value. This is the real price of the decision. Step 4. What is the opportunity cost? What could the difference between this and a cheaper alternative become if invested over the same time period? When you put these 4 numbers next to each other, the emotional fog disappears very quickly. Let's apply it to Mark. Very quickly. Total paid. About $60,000. Value after 7 years. Maybe $19,000. Unrecoverable cost. About $41,000. Opportunity cost of the cheaper path. Roughly $35,000. $40,000. So the real decision is not, do I want this car? It's, do I want to trade about $30,000 to $40,000 of future wealth for this version of transportation? That's a very different question. And when you start asking the right question, a lot of normal purchases suddenly look insane. This rule doesn't tell you what to buy. It just forces the truth to show up before you decide. So what do you actually do with all of this? Not in theory, in real life. Let's make this practical and boring, because boring is what builds wealth. Think in 3 levels. Level 1, this week. First, you change how you evaluate car decisions. Stop asking, can I afford the payment? Start asking, what is the total cost of ownership? Build a simple spreadsheet or use a calculator. Put in total paid over the loan, estimated resale value, unrecoverable cost, opportunity cost of the cheaper option. Just seeing these 4 numbers in one place will kill most bad ideas immediately. Second, set a hard rule. No loan longer than 48 months. Ideally, no loan at all. Long terms are not a feature. They are a warning label. Level 2. This month, set a car budget based on your life, not your ego. A simple guideline. Your car should not be more than a small fraction of your annual income or your net worth, not your borrowing capacity. Then, pick reliability over image. Look for boring models, proven reliability records. Something you won't feel emotional about. Emotion is expensive. Also, get comfortable with the idea that your car is not part of your identity. It is a tool. Level 3, the next 3 to 6 months. If you already have a bad car loan, your goal is simple. Shorten it or kill it. Refinance to a shorter term if possible. Make extra principal payments. Or plan an exit when the math makes sense. And here's the most important habit. Every time you don't upgrade something, invest the difference automatically. Make the boring choice pay you. Because the real win is not just spending less. It's redirecting that money into something that compounds instead of depreciates. This is how you flip the script. You stop using your income to rent a lifestyle, and you start using it to buy your future. Let's go back to Mark. In one timeline, he keeps the SUV. He makes the $720 payments. He gets used to the leather, the screen, the feeling of having made it. 7 years go by. He's paid about $60,000. The car is now worth maybe $18,000 or $19,000. The money is gone. The upgrade feeling is gone. All that's left is normal. In the other timeline, Mark buys the boring car. He invests the difference, month after month, quietly, automatically. 7 years go by. He still has a car, and he has an investment account with roughly $35,000 to $40,000 in it. Same person, same income, same life. Two very different financial trajectories. This is the part nobody tells you. The trap doesn't look like a trap. It looks like normal life. You don't go broke in one big mistake. You bleed out in small fees. The fix is not willpower. It's math and systems. Mark didn't buy a bad car. He bought a bad math problem. And that's the real lesson here. Before you sign anything, before you fall in love with the screen and the seats and the story you're telling yourself, run the numbers. If you want the calculator or the template I use to break these decisions down, check the description. And if you want more videos like this, subscribe.